Good afternoon. I'm calling our Town Council work session for Tuesday, March 24th to order. If you will please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. All right, we will start this afternoon's meeting with our town manager's comments. Mr. Parsons.
Thank you, Mayor Clement, members of council. I'll call it short agenda today. I don't want to use the term brief in any way, but we do have a number of staff members that are currently at training opportunities. So I'm going to try and help steer through the packet today with some help from Courtney, and we'll get through this. So you've got a public hearing just on an annexation. It's a pretty straightforward annexation. Somebody looking to get utilities at a home on Clark Street. And then you've got a consent agenda that includes a pair of minutes from your February meetings and two budget amendments. The first is a small budget amendment to the Municipal Service District. This is the Morganton Park South area. And the amendment is simply to cover the county collection fees for those taxes. The county collects an administrative fee, and it's a percentage of the revenues that are collected. So the fact that we're asking for a small adjustment to pay the county a little bit more is a direct result of having collected a little bit more than what we anticipated. So this is all good. The second one is for the fire department overtime line item due to minimum staffing requirements and a number of callbacks that have had to occur throughout the year, specifically in the driver operator position. We are going to come in well over the original line item budget in the fire department for overtime. So again, driver operator, we only have so many people that can drive those big trucks out to a scene, and obviously if the truck doesn't roll, neither do the other firemen that go on it. So that's your consent agenda this afternoon. Then we will have a brief discussion. At your last work session, you had adopted a lease with Mr. Kevin Drum for the train depot. And you may recall during that conversation, Mr. Drum was not present, but there was some question around the at renewal, whether there would be an increase of annually to the lease. We went back to him on that, and we wanted to get that taken care of. In addition, now that he is starting to order some of the materials and things for the upfit, he has requested that the June 1 certain date be moved to July 1 because he has already run into some delays on some of those materials. Assistant Manager Cameron is here. If you have any questions around that, I think he can speak to some of the things we're running into with the town hall, and it's not inconsistent with the same type of stuff Mr. Drum is running into. Mac has gone through the language, taken a look at what Mr. Drum had requested, and the language that's in front of you that is actually contained on the agenda has been reviewed by Mac, and he's in concurrence, and staff would recommend an amendment when that item rolls around. Beyond that, then, I just simply wanted to provide you a little preview of the budget retreat that will be not in 2 days, but next Thursday, April 2nd. The intent is not to get into great detail this afternoon, but to kind of give you just a high-level discussion over some of the key things that will be in that. We are still very much refining numbers. We are still very much collecting data. But again, we'll go through that. I do have one item this afternoon that I would like to spend a little more detailed time on, and that's the discussion of the environmental services fee. You'll recall that's one that usually takes some significant time at the retreat. We do have some initial figures for you on that, in addition to a look at if we were to create an enterprise fund out of garbage recycling and environmental services or yard waste, what it would look like. So we'll talk about that in a little more detail than some of the other budget items this afternoon. But
Okay.
That is kind of your agenda preview. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Thank you. So the waste management discussion will be, it's probably not the right way to term it. Municipal waste discussion will be inside the budget review retreat preview.
So I plan to have a little bit of a discussion around what the fee might look like or
Okay.
what we may be asking you to do come April 2nd. And I'll ask for some, if you have a hard answer of yes or no, particularly relative to the switching it over to an enterprise fund, I'm happy to take that answer today because it's less work we have to do ahead of April 2nd. But obviously, anything suggested today can change on April 2nd too, until right up to the point that you adopt the budget.
It's going to be a busy week for you.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Parsons. All right, moving on to our only public hearing tonight, AX-01-26, the public hearing for annexation of 1.25 acres at 609 Clark Street. Is there any additional information besides that we set the date and what you already told us?
There is nothing additional. Again, everything appears to be in order with the annexation, and unless there is public comment with it being a hearing that makes you believe otherwise, we would recommend adoption of this.
Okay.
This is the hearing, right? Not
Yeah.
set the date.
This is the
We've already
hearing.
set the date. It just happened to be today.
Yeah.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none. Council, do you have questions for staff? No? All right, is there a motion? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was, this is Clark Street?
Yes.
What's the crossroad with it? Okay, I'm good.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was just getting my bearing.
I'm not advancing,
No, I got
Courtney.
it. This was-
Is this the full packet you have in there? Oh, this
just
looks
took a
like just
second
the
for mine to
agenda.
pop up as well.
It's just the agenda.
It's not advancing because it's not the packet.
Oh,
You've got it pulled up, but I
Yeah,
wanted to
took
pull it
mine
up
a
for everybody
second to
else.
turn in.
All right, unless anybody wants to see it on the screen, then we'll just
Yeah.
go ahead and take a motion and let it get pulled up for future items.
Motion to adopt an ordinance approving voluntary annexation request AX-01-26 for the property as defined in submitted legal description and to have the ordinance effective immediately.
second.
All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Courtney, do you want me to give you a few more minutes? Or I guess let's just move on, and then if questions come up, we'll make sure that we give you time to pull
We're
those
going to
up.
pretty quickly move our way to a different document, so.
Does anyone have any questions on the consent agenda?
Just for clarification, we are not talking at all about the rate or anything like that. It is just a matter of
Did it-
designating funds on
MSD.
the MSD.
Yeah, this is purely just making sure that funds that are already collected in there can be appropriated and spent with the county for their collection purposes. So,
All right, thank you.
And we will, that's one of the budget retreat items we'll go over as well as MSD.
assuming that we have a number from the county, which I do not have to date, but yes.
Okay. All right, are there other questions? Okay, hearing none, I need a motion for our consent agenda.
I will move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, motion carries. All right, council updates and discussion. We have the first item, Seaboard Station. Attorney McCarley, is that you, or is this going to be Reagan?
Again, I think the agenda itself sort of speaks to what is being asked. Again, you adopted a full lease agreement at the last meeting. What this one does is it goes ahead and it changes that June 1 date to the July 1. So it's an amendment of what you've already adopted. And again, he went along with the 3% each and every year once the extension kicks in after the 2-year proof of concept period.
Does this extend, so I know it was a reduced rate for the time leading up to opening. It extended that one more month.
1 month,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, I'm fine with
And if it were to open, if everything came in and he got it open in June, we would prorate and the full amount would be paid. It's just, it doesn't look like that's going to occur.
that. Okay. But everything else that we asked for, he was fine with?
Yes.
Okay. All right, are there other questions? Okay. Do you need a motion?
Yes, to amend the agreement.
All right, a motion to amend the agreement as presented in the agenda.
I'll move to approve the Seaboard Station lease as presented with the amendments today.
Thank you. Is there a second? All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right,
All right.
moving right around to our budget retreat preview.
Courtney, if you could go ahead and pull up the funding priorities document, and you also have a copy of this in front of you. Again, I'm just going to go through, I'm not going to read the document to you. I'm going to hit some highlights on the pages as we move through, and then we'll move into some of the environmental services discussion. What we've attempted to do is kind of just outline a very high-level approach to the budget this year and what you can expect to see next Tuesday. So sort of the opening page just talks about outlining goals of maintaining core services, addressing core infrastructure needs, and of course, investments in our workforce. Real focus following the director's retreat on the budget and preservation of our existing service levels and assets. As you will see next week, and as I always bring to council, there will be a list of items that were requested but left on the cutting room floor. We'll have some discussions around whether to add any of those things back in and what that means and try to match revenues to the expenses. But first and foremost, our priority was at least maintaining our current service levels and those assets that are aging and are in need of replacement. You will also recall, and there's some later discussion in here, we were undergoing some compensation study work. We will have some results from that to discuss on April the 2nd. It will have an impact on the recommended budget. I'm still awaiting the final report on that, but we're running some numbers based on what we fully expect to see in the final report based upon conversation with the consultants that were doing that work. Obviously, you've got some non-discretionary financial commitments that have been added to the budget, the largest of which being your first full year of debt service and operational costs associated with the new town hall. You'll remember that we just did some budget amendments to make what amounts to a half payment because of how that loan worked. We only had one of two semi-annual payments to make in the current fiscal year. And that was a payment that when we adopted a budget for the current fiscal year, we didn't know we were going to have. The town hall project kind of came available to us and we were able to take advantage of it. But we will have a full year of payment in the coming year. So we've got to account for that. One thing that has landed on the cutting floor up to this point is that any new positions requested have been removed from that budget, but we will talk about those requests on the 2nd. I believe there are no new programs left in the budget at this point, but again, we'll discuss what was requested. And then there's certain equipment or vehicle additions that have also kind of hit that cutting room floor. So again, current operations, and then the last paragraph here just talks a little bit about that alternative rate methodology with environmental services, but that's going to be a separate topic we discuss this afternoon. What I don't know today, and I don't anticipate necessarily knowing by April the 2nd, because you'll recall we're meeting a little earlier, even if just by a week this year. I think last year, if I recall correctly, and it may have been 2 years ago, but I think I came to the retreat and had literally gotten the final number from the county the day of. So we were making changes on the fly. Being a week earlier this year, I don't know that I'll have it yet, but we'll be awaiting the final county property valuation. We have, to this point, been working with a 2.2% growth number. That was provided to me by Mr. Briggs, the tax administrator from Moore County. He felt pretty confident in that. The numbers that they had not finalized were commercial-based valuations, which obviously have an impact on Southern Pines, and I would anticipate that if they have an impact on that 2.2 number, it should push that number up and not down. So we are working with 2.2. If I hear something different before next Thursday, you will hear it also.
Help me understand what the 2.2 is. Is that your expected difference in the property valuation?
That's the growth in the total aggregate property tax valuation. So when you apply your tax rate,
That's what we'll see.
take the aggregate number, 2.2.
Okay.
Yeah. Obviously, we do not know what and will not know by April 2nd or probably even July 1st necessarily. There's always the concern about what may happen in Raleigh relative to the state and our finances. That concern is particularly peaked this year because they have committees meeting on property tax relief. Property tax relief directly impacts local governments. It does not impact the state budget. So we'll see what comes out of that, but I mean, that is something that is being tracked very closely by all localities across the state and also the League of Municipalities. Sales tax data. We have already made one adjustment based upon the data I just sent all of you, I think, last week for December collections, which actually came in very, very strong, despite conversation nationally about what happened around Christmas time and sales being down. Apparently, locally, that was not the case. We will have, not before next Thursday, but I will talk about it next Thursday, as I'm going to talk about it now. Our intent is to make at least one more adjustment to whatever figures that we bring in for final adoption in June, based upon April returns of January sales tax. Now, I say that, and again, up to this date, those adjustments have all been positive. There's always the chance January comes back poorly and we have to adjust slightly downward. We may or may not suggest making an adjustment in May following receipt of that, depending on how impactful it is, just because generally we like to present a budget at the first hearing in May that looks an awful lot like the budget that we adopt in June, unless there's something during the hearing that really changes it. But unless that sales tax receipt number is going to significantly impact the budget, we may or may not make that adjustment. But there are two more sales tax periods that we anticipate having figures on, good, bad, or indifferent, prior to June adoption of a July 1 budget. So those are some of the things. We've gotten nothing from Moore County yet relative to those services that impact our budget. Most of that is really on the utility side, and it's what they do with their sewer treatment number. I've not seen anything on that yet. The one thing that can impact the general fund, which is really what we're talking about today, are their landfill fees. If they were to significantly or insignificantly increase their yard waste fees, that is going to impact ultimately our expenses. So I don't have those figures at this point. The other one that we're watching, we felt really good about it back in January and February when we were first gathering data. World events have changed it, at least for the moment. Obviously, fuel costs. We operate an awful lot of vehicles, and we've seen a significant spike in those. We're all cognizant of it. I'm not ready to jump in and budget for an entire year based upon the price of gas today, because hopefully some things occur that we see it come back down. But that's just one that I throw out there, that if we don't make adjustments, it's conceivable that if nothing gives mid-year, we'll be talking about some kind of amendments just to cover that. But it's another thing that is out there. It's out there every year. It's particularly poignant this year because of the significant increase we've seen in a very, very short period of time. Fortunately, before that spike occurred, we were almost topped out on the tanks, so we haven't had to purchase gas at the current rates, and hopefully it comes back down before we do.
Timing was good.
And then finally, what we don't know, and council's aware of this from last month's discussion, is we're not putting in the budget any figures for lease or sale of either the admin or finance buildings until some decisions are made there. So that, again, can be further discussion on the 2nd if some decisions are made. But right now, we're just accounting for the fact that we've got to keep heat at a minimum, cool at a minimum, so as to not damage the structures. But otherwise, those buildings will be empty at some point in the near future.
Reagan, do you have any history with a building coming up, a vacant building occurring? And if so, has there been a needs, have we hired anybody to do a needs study or a space or needs study ever?
We had done a space and needs study back in,
21?
I'd want to say 19. I'll tell you when it
Was it the
occurred.
group out of Charlotte? Is that what that was?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes,
Right.
and I'll tell you when it occurred. It was when the elementary school was going to come available that ultimately became the Montessori school. We took a
Right.
pretty strong look at purchasing that campus and maybe turning it into some town hall types of things and
Right.
stuff. relative to the structure, the expense of changing it from a school to another use was going to be pretty significant. A whole lot more than we're spending on town hall today, let's put it that way,
Right.
but a lot more space too. There was some need study done at that time that didn't show a lot of immediate need for additional space. Now, some things have changed since, and I think it was 2019, but maybe I'm 2 years off because it seemed like it was pre-COVID. But
It was definitely pre-Ann and I,
yes, it
So it's-
definitely was.
either 19 or 20, yeah.
Yeah. So it,
Out of Charlotte who were overseeing restoration bids, or,
it was architects out of Charlotte that did the space needs study. They also had been involved in, and it might have been involved at that time, I don't think the project was complete just yet, a renovation of a previous school to a municipal facility. So they had some very real numbers at the time of what it was costing to take an older school structure and turn it into some space. Yes.
so the two buildings that we're talking about immediately would be the two buildings who are in the historic district of downtown.
Yes.
And are that are in, they're not whose, sorry about that, that are in the historic district of downtown. And can you give me a ballpark figure? And I know this is not a fair question, but can you give me some idea of what it would cost to do a needs space study currently? If we were to do that before we start putting buildings on the sales block?
I could get you a number. I would very much hesitate to provide
I would think that that would be
figure.
prudent on your part. So I appreciate that. I'll withdraw the question. But my point is, before we, let's not put the cart before the horse in that regard.
Yeah.
And I think that some of the things you talked about were youth programs for the library, and they had possibly looked at, which would be sort of a sweet, ironic, full circle moment to turn the library, the old library, into a library
It was
facility.
not for that building, it was for the other building.
That was for the admin building, yeah.
So if those are things that are out there, then I think it becomes a policy situation for us to decide what's a dream list and what's actually a needs list, and trying to look at it with a 20-year lens at least, as far as what the needs might be. So I just want to put that out there, I'm going to be advocating for that. I think, and would not like to throw a lot of money at that, but would like to sort of have some idea of what the market value would be of a space and needs study. Once you sell a building, it's gone.
That's
Yeah,
true.
I think that what probably makes the most sense is to do an evaluation of what the buildings are worth and what they are going to require as far as cost. And then figure out what the rent would have to be if we rented them, or what the sales price would be if we sold them. And then as a council, review those options.
Right, and I think we could agree to disagree on that. I think a needs
I think
study.
that's a lovely answer. We agree to
think-
disagree.
I think
We'll add it
the-
to the agenda
I think it's
at another
three,
meeting.
there's really three issues at hand, or three potential, they're not all one thing. As far as immediate needs, I can tell you, even based on that 19 study, with the space that we have picked up in the new town hall,
Right.
we're good for a period of time. Now, when you talk about things like teen programming or library, those are obviously,
Would not be appropriate for the third floor of the town hall.
no, but I'm also, I'm going to hearken back to a previous council member's conversations
Right.
during every budget season when he talked about nice to haves or wants
Right,
versus needs.
correct,
And
correct.
those are what I'm going to call not mandatory services.
Right, and I was
Not-
calling,
I don't
I
mean
was
that
calling
in a bad
them
way.
dream
Just-
services. So we're all on the same page with different labels,
and
right?
relative to, there's this needs study, which could be a needs and wants study, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you talk about those two facilities, the next discussion would be around, is the money it would take to renovate and update those facilities, what is that compared to removing them and just utilizing the land? Because when you talk about once they're gone, it's really about, it's as much about location, 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 and the land as
Absolutely.
it is anything to do with the facility.
Absolutely.
The mayor's suggestion around, I know we have received, and I sent all of you a copy of at least the one inquiry I got about space. And I sent that for no other reason than you just know there are people out there looking for it and ideas, because we talked about zoning of properties and different things.
I responded to Reagan. I've received several inquiries as
Yeah.
well. And if it means, if there's an option of renting it that takes it off of our expense line item, but maintains some ownership so that if there is a need in 20 years, we're certainly not paying to manage a building for 20 years or the upkeep and getting some use out of it.
So the one,
To pay for itself, like, at least break even.
I would think that we would
makes
run
sense.
things like a business, yeah. Like, I just don't think that the taxpayer should pay for nostalgia or historic management.
I don't have, and I brought this up last month when we first opened conversation about these two structures. I don't have a current appraisal or likely sales value for either one of them.
Right.
We're aware that First Bank had done a little study on that, and we kind of have some ballpark numbers if we're selling. What I really do not have at this point is sort of a comparable market analysis if we were to lease the space. The most recent thing I have for that involved the train depot that we just talked about the lease on, and that was the $3,000. But that dates back now, I think 3 or 4 years, because it was before 305 Trackside decided not to renew at the market rate. If we believe leasing is a real potential, I would like to maybe go get a price on at least having an analysis done on what a minimum reasonable lease would be for either and or both of the two structures. And again, there's a lot of variables in that, particularly with the admin building. We've talked about the need to zone. The amount it can be rented for may very well be subject to what you allow, quite honestly, even sell it, whether rent or sell, but what you allow to happen there. If you're just going to put a regular CB zoning on it, that's one set of things. But if you want to limit it to only retail uses or only office uses, or maybe office uses that actually generate foot traffic versus just make an appointment, drop in. All of those things can impact numbers for either sale or lease. So I'd like to get a number on having a study done on lease, sale, or both. But I feel like that study's greatest value or closest thing to a legitimate figures is probably requires some further conversation about, do you wish to limit
Right.
uses on one or both properties? The finance building, old library, is a little easier because it's already zone CB. It's, do you want to put any further limit on it, or are you good with that? Obviously, the location of the admin building, particularly since it has to be carved out of the park, you may have some further opinion on limitations that you do or don't want to put on that structure.
Just a quick question. Both of those buildings, if we sold, I'm not saying,
Yeah.
would they fall back under the auspices of the historic district? Would they
They,
become?
they stay there based on their location.
They're in the auspices
Well,
now.
yeah,
We have
and
to
they
go to
look-
the HDC to do
Yeah.
things.
Okay, so no change. Okay, that's
Yeah,
great.
there's no change to that at all. But again, I've talked about uses and zoning, but if you wanted to somehow put, and this can super impact a sales price, as you all understand, but if you wanted to put limitations on it relative to the ability to make the decision to get a demo permit or something, I mean, those types of things could significantly impact sale value too. Because in many ways, particularly with the state of those structures in some ways, it's location. The land is worth as much as the building probably, so.
Absolutely. Right. Thank you.
Overall, needs-based. I kind of also want to see the dust settle on the move, because I know, like,
I
where
agree.
planning is, there's a lot of space in that building that's going to go empty. So it's not just, to me, it's not just those two in a vacuum.
That's right.
It's all the spaces that get impacted.
The dominoes fall.
happens.
Yeah.
I mean, based on our last conversation, I was falling on I felt like the sole person saying my clear interest is in selling them, but it seemed like the majority of everyone else felt more comfortable holding on to them. If you all feel like holding on to them makes sense, maybe at this point we can at least direct Reagan to looking at lease values unless other people feel like they want to sell them, and then or one building goes one way or the other. But it would be nice to have a general idea of how everyone feels so that Reagan can start this. Right now, his options are like this. We need to narrow them down a little bit.
And we have a little bit of time, but the
have
further we
time.
get ahead of it, the better. And
No, I agree. I mean, I think my bigger concern is that empty buildings are just not good for anybody. They're not good for the town. They're not good for the buildings. They're not good for our residents.
I'm sorry, go
No,
ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I was agreeing with you when
Okay.
you were saying like selling them. I thought the same thing. It's better for the residents, we're getting them off of us. We don't have to worry about upkeep, the whole thing. But I too have been contacted. I kind of talked with Reagan a little bit. And I know the person that I spoke with was definitely probably not interested in buying. So, yeah,
I mean, the
maybe
other
we,
thing is,
you
yeah,
know,
if we lease it, it doesn't preclude us from never selling it either.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
It may just,
It's a temporary decision that we've made at this point.
also offer, because this could impact it, and it's the kind of questions I will get into if we were to pursue the study. And the first thing I do is get a price on it. I would highly recommend that if we go to lease either one of these facilities, that we include as part of that lease the utilities to be paid by the tenant.
like a triple net lease. Yeah.
What we'd like to do is get our facility crew out from under HVAC repairs. I'd love to get out from under any potential roof repairs. Probably can do that at admin because we just put a lot of money into that roof. Finance building's a different animal altogether. But if there's a general concurrence that yes, as part of any lease, we would push those operating and maintenance expenses off to the tenant, that's good to know that we're all on a similar page with that too. So.
Okay. Yeah, do you have thoughts on lease versus sell?
I don't have very many clear thoughts about anything right now, but the current status with the Arts Council on the Campbell House, they pay the utilities, right? Or am I not right? I know we're still housed upstairs.
I believe if they don't pay all of it, they pay a percentage.
I think
of
so
it,
too.
yes.
So I think there's precedent for that.
Yeah.
And-
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And I certainly agree with that. And I also,
Even our $1 leases to nonprofits involve
Right.
utilities being
that's
put
Boys and
off
Girls
to
Club,
them.
right?
Yeah.
Right, okay. So I am not, unless someone can convince me that it makes sense, I am not on board. And people have actually tried to convince me both directions already. I'm not on board with selling immediately. I'm not on board with just marching straight to selling the buildings. But leasing, I have no problem with trying to figure that out and what restrictions would apply. And I guess I'm concerned in regard to the administration building. I know that the HDC has approved in the past the ability to make the administrative building ADA compliant, and we've never moved forward with that. And I probably need to check in with Mac on that one. Do we have a problem leasing a property that is not ADA compliant?
I think you lease as is. And again, the one advantage to that, depending on what type of user comes along, we have got the COA that can transfer with the lease. And if it's a user that values making that available, they're able to move forward with the project without having to go through the HDC approval process.
Yeah, Mac, is that in fact legal now to enter into a lease on a building that's not ADA compliant?
As long as we have covered that it will be, we'd be fine. And if we're renting to a private interest, it's not the issue.
Okay, so pursuant to the law on the ADA compliance and putting in place the support, making sure that it is ADA compliance, is that something that you can shift in a lease, that responsibility, that liability, you can shift in a lease to the leasee?
Yeah.
Or the leaseor, sorry, my bad. Okay, so, okay, that was the first thing that came to mind. And the old library, current finance building is ADA compliant, I think.
It is for accessibility purposes. Mike, do you have any idea relative to the restroom facilities there? I don't think it is.
I don't think the restroom.
Not
I
even
think
the
you're right.
restrooms out front? Okay.
Okay. And Mr. Cameron, it looked like you were either super interested in the discussion or had something you wanted to say. Was there something on your mind? Okay. I didn't know if there was something that you were wishing one of us would ask. All right. Thank you.
As far as, and it doesn't have to be, this is not a vote, this is not final decision, just trying to give Reagan some direction on
That don't
what
have
to
enough
start moving forward on.
information. One, what's going to open up with the move? How much office space is going to be left in addition to the two buildings? Potential lease options compared to the carrying costs. I mean, just all of the above, but just taking the big picture approach to what,
Are you more comfortable with
options?
leasing or selling right now?
I mean, not until I mean,
Okay.
the thought of preserving them would be great. Again, not empty. I don't think anybody wants an empty building. I think that's off the table.
So when you
But
say preserving, you mean renting them?
preferably, but again, if it's an option,
Okay.
if it means leaving it empty, that changes the analysis.
No, yeah, I don't think leaving them empty is on the table. I mean, I think it's one way or the other, someone needs to be there, whether it's us or someone renting or, yeah, someone owning.
I think, as is often the case, that Mr. Pate has hit the nail on the head as far as just advancing cautiously and with all the components that we need to be able to make the decision. I know you'd love for us to say, yeah, we definitely want to rent, or we definitely want to.
But he's asking that right now.
But
We're
I
not
think
making a
that,
decision.
excuse me, I'm talking, thank you.
If you're
But
just
I do
repeating
think-
something that we've already discussed,
But I
which
do
is we're
think
not
that's
trying
the
to make a decision
important
right
way
now.
to move forward is with all of the information garnered before we're making a decision.
Thank you for
I
saying
appreciate
that we're going to be cautious again. As we continue to be cautious, and again, I will repeat, we're not making a decision, but I'm looking for input from everyone on how they feel. And Anne, after you speak, I'm sure she's going to tell you that she wants you to be cautious as well. But Bob, how do you feel about renting or leasing? Are you okay with the manager taking actions to getting numbers on one or the other?
Yes, I think it's going to be a tough decision either way, simply because they are historic buildings. But at the end of the day, I really like to see the data, whatever it is that we decide that we move forward with, because I think if one proves to be more beneficial to the town, and just hear me out for a second, so say we're able to save, just generic figures, $1,000, and we're able to put that back into the town, and that allows us to provide services and things for other folks as opposed to just this lingering debt. I would kind of lean toward that. I mean, at the end of the day, we are a business. And then we've got to weigh the option of, financial gains versus sort of social gains. And I think once we really flesh out the numbers, and I know that's your guys' hard work, but so right now I'm kind of very much in the middle, but I'm not opposed to either.
Okay.
But the nerdy historian in me says, let's, dare I say, it, Mayor, let's move cautiously.
Let's move cautiously.
I'm sorry.
No, I think-
I had to make a joke.
No, it's okay. I think what I'm asking for everyone to do is rather than put the cart before the horse or the horse before the cart, I just need a map. I need Reagan to have an idea of what the map
Right.
looks like so that we can start to
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
what it looks
I agree. I think we should look at it, yeah.
I will offer this much. The last time I did the lease study on the depot, and please, this is entirely off the top of my head, and if I find out I'm off by exponential numbers, I'll correct myself via email later. But I want to say like $2,500 plus minus to do that little analysis type of thing. So if nobody is like grossly offended by that, I'll go and see what I can get in the way of Solis, a figure to do the lease amount study for each of the buildings.
And it's because it's not a, it's individual line items. We're not packaging this as we're going to
No,
rent
no, no,
both,
no,
sell
no.
both.
No.
So they're individual line items that's awesome.
And if there are very specific questions that would significantly help that assessment or impact it, I will bring those questions back to
I think
have
that's
some
great.
further discussion about.
And I know you've got a lot on your plate for the next, especially week.
It's
but-
that time of
yeah.
year.
But I think if at least this can be on your radar, that at some point something has to be done, and we all seem to be comfortable with getting numbers, that's great.
And I guess one final thing, and maybe Mac already knows or can point me to it. I'd like to see, I'm just thinking more about the admin building, such a unique location, literally in the middle of the park. So whether we lease or sell, allowed uses are of concern to me. And I know that the downtown historic district has some different rules as far as what can and can't go in those shops. So somewhere where there's and it may, you may just alert me to a exhibit in our code or UDO, which is fine, but just to see those listings and if I'm comfortable with those or if I want to even further restrict them.
So two things I'll give you the shorthand like cheat sheet for that. First of all, what you're talking about with the retail versus office kind of frontage thing, probably not going to come into play into that block because it's the only building in the block. So no real concerns there. If council's comfortable, retail or office, you're comfortable. But what I would definitely direct you to is the table of permissible uses under the CB district. Take a look at those uses because you're probably going to want to zone it CB, and you might want to zone it CB, CD, and remove certain uses that otherwise are allowed in the CB. So I just take a look at your table of permissible uses, see if there's something there that you say, you know what, being next to the basketball courts and the park, I don't really see that type of operation fitting there. And then what we can do is BJ and his team can draw up a rezoning application that simply removes from the CB table of permissible uses those uses that you have concerns with. And we just simply carve out a footprint around the building, we rezone it into a CBCD, and it's ready to go. But that's your cheat sheet. I don't think you want to do anything other than CB because you're in the central business district, but you may have specific uses you're not interested in.
Thank you.
That's helpful.
Hear you say earlier that you would rather us wait until we kind of get everything finalized with where we're going first in terms of the new town hall?
That would be mostly if we are leaning to the sale option.
Okay,
because
got
I
you.
would like to just get an understanding of what open spaces are we going to have as a result of other people. These two buildings are
Alright.
super easy. They're all going to be empty.
Yeah, first and foremost, that area will be backfilled in one form or fashion as a result of emptying the Campbell House. So we're going to get Parks and Rec moved either into backfilling that space or potentially backfilling other space as we move others. And we haven't gotten to that point because we're still trying to get town hall open, so.
Current plan on town hall is to move IT to town hall or not? Not to move IT, to leave IT where it is because,
Either leave it where it is, or that is one option to maybe backfill kind of the planning area, and then
Right.
Parks and Rec could move where IT is. But
Right,
those are
exactly, which is
kind
a
of the
logical-
moving parts.
Right.
So.
I just think that it's going to be very difficult for us to manage expectations on empty space. So that kind of leads me to, we're not always going to be guaranteed a rentor. Does that make sense? So like, I think we got to weigh into that because I think there's 4 empty buildings in downtown right now, last count. And I know that, so as we kind of do the sort of that mental masturbation in our minds going, oh my God, what is it going to be? We have to take into context that at some point, someone else has a say in whether they're going to rent it. And so that's why for me, it's like, hey, is it more fiscally responsible for us to sell? I don't know at this point. And that's really what it is.
So I don't think any of us can know at this point.
Yeah.
It's because we don't have numbers, but we don't have numbers because
We don't know
we're
what we
not,
wanna do.
we're not giving Reagan any insight into how we feel. Everyone's just saying, I want to be cautious. So I think that, yeah, I think we are
So you got to,
all comfortable with you getting numbers
Yes.
at whatever point your schedule allows. Okay.
now,
Those, at that point, we can come up with answers on what does it make sense to do from a, being responsible with taxpayers' money, being responsible with, space in our downtown shopping district,
right.
a number of issues.
And
Library is beautiful though.
I know it is.
Not to get Bill's goat, but I really love that building.
Yeah, that front room is
We
amazing.
spent a lot of days in
really
there.
about the front room because so much
Yes.
more of it is not good.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. So all of that was simply to say, yeah, we don't really know with those two buildings, so it's not part of what you'll see on April
No,
2nd.
I think that's a good choice to not include it on April 2nd. You're going to go through the environmental service packet right now?
I am. Well, as soon as I get to the end of this one. So
Okay.
I don't plan on spending a whole bunch of time on the next 2 pages, but it just talks about workforce strategy. You've seen an awful lot of this when we talked about the compensation study last year. And again, I hope to have a full report on the compensation study and talk about those impacts on April 2nd. So that makes those 2 pages very quick. The facilities page that you'll find after that. Again, we just talked a little bit about town hall. Just a quick update on that. We have been told 4 to 7 weeks on furniture, but that is to include delivery and setup time. So, but we are probably looking mid-May, hopefully not June.
June 1 at the
But,
latest,
yeah,
probably? Yeah, great.
yeah.
That's great.
Otherwise, things there are going very well, very smoothly. We are making progress, so.
Excellent.
Bring us a line item. I know that we had the building was 6.4 and we had
Yep.
a loan for 7. At some point, will there be a line item of
We'll
money
give you a breakdown
spent?
of
Yeah.
what, yeah,
That'd be great.
absolutely.
Is there a time to personally witness the improvements within the building without just causing too much of an
Yeah, we can make that
upheaval?
happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in seeing the progress.
Yep.
That'd be great. Of the new town hall, yeah, because I saw it, I want to see the before and then also before I see the after, yeah.
The before, the during, and the after.
Yeah, right.
So again, already talked about the debt service. We've got a floor in the bay at the fire station that needs to be done, the air handler at the library, which is really a big ticket item. The other item on here is the garage. For the time being, we have left the garage, I'll call it on the cut floor, but we know we've got to come back to it.
Yeah.
We are in the process, staff has been to visit at least one garage that was done under the design build process that we talked a little bit about. We believe we can do it for less than what the original estimate was, which was around $6 million. I think we can do it for less than that. I say that, of course, the longer we wait to do it, the more the price goes up. But we are also in the process of undertaking a couple of initiatives relative to both our fleet department and how they're operating relative to some of our larger equipment, particularly fire trucks. But probably just as importantly, Mike has been working with Enterprise Fleet Management, as in Enterprise Rental Car, if you've ever done that. Both Pinehurst and Aberdeen have some relationship with them already. We're in the process of doing some pricing that would look at, and actually, I'll just go ahead and say, when we get beyond facilities here, I'll quickly, vehicle replacements. We've got quite a few in this year's budget, particularly on the police side. And you'll find some data within this memo that talks about, we do get a lot of years out of our vehicles. One van is 17 years old. We've got a 2004 that we're replacing. And it's because a lot of them aren't high mileage. Now, they get heavy use. Some of them are driving around construction sites, et cetera, et cetera. So there's some advantages to the leasing program. It's really a 5-year cycle type of deal. And you're just making payments on it, and then you've got equity in the vehicle at the end. We don't get a lot of equity out of our stuff when we go to sell it because it's pretty old and it's got a lot of use. So we're looking at all the pros and cons on that. It would also change the relationship of ongoing maintenance for our fleet garage. It would not change the fact that we don't have an adequate garage for our larger equipment, be that environmental services, fire trucks, dump trucks, backhoes. We just don't have the right space for that, as you've all seen. But relative to the day-to-day oil changing, maintenance, police car, pickup truck type of stuff, the lease program could be a huge advantage in that area and taking some of the workload down for the garage.
So they do that day, that like low.
They basically hold contracts with a wide number of local garages, which helps with, we have priced in the past maybe trying to outsource some of our maintenance to free up. The challenge is no garage based upon our limited amount. I say limited, we've got a huge fleet, but it's in the grand scheme of things, they're not willing to provide immediate service. So if you got a patrol car that's down, you need to get that back on the road. And our guys are able to say, all right, we're going to move these 3 jobs over, get this done. local shop on a one-on-one relationship isn't going to be able to do that. Because of the size of their fleet, because they already manage multiple fleets locally, they've got multiple garages under contract that there's always the better chance that we can get an opening somewhere to get something in and out and taken care of. So there's advantages there. Again, I'm not going to say it's necessarily cheaper looking at just the fleet because we get so many years out of what we buy. We will get more equity at the end. The other advantage that doesn't often get thought of when I talk about 2004, 2014, obviously vehicles have changed over time relative to safety, backup cameras, all of those things. We aren't taking advantage of that with a vehicle that's from 2004. On a 5-year cycle, you do get the immediate benefit of safety upgrades and things of that nature. So again, it's very early in the discussion. Mike has really been pressing them because of the budget cycle and all of that. But we may have more to talk about on that come April 2nd, or certainly before any adoption in June. We'll take a look at the pros and cons and see what makes sense. But those are some examples. I started that conversation because I mentioned the garage. We are really trying to look at ways to value engineer that and not make it more than it necessarily needs to be.
Okay.
So,
We appreciate that.
so I skipped over, it talks a little bit about truck backhoe. You'll see all of that at the budget, and you've got it in your hand now. Parks and recreation facilities. We've talked about lighting at the Jay Hines Park, and we talked about that because the bogies are going to cover it. We'll end up fronting that and doing the project before they are up and running, but they are under contract to at least provide us reimbursement for us. So it'll be in the budget as an expense, but also there'll be a matching revenue
There'll be a
for it.
reimbursement on that.
Exactly.
And where did you and I chatted a long time ago about upgrading the pool,
Bathhouse?
bathhouse, yes.
Not in this budget, unless you all decide to somehow fund that come next Thursday. But that was not even on the long list of things that were funded and or got cut from recreation. And we'll show you the stuff that got cut, and we can have conversations around that. But the bathhouse is not currently in.
But the lighting is going to go in, it's going to go in as a budget line item and it's going to zero out. So the lighting is not actually an expense for next year.
It's an expense up front, but it's a
Right,
reimbursement.
but it will be
yes.
a reimbursement.
That's right. But that bathhouse, the last time we talked about it, was $350,000 to $400,000. The lighting's 48.
Okay, yeah, I understand. No, I understand the discrepancy, but I also would invite all of my fellow council members to go check out the bathhouse at the pool.
I have been there. I have changed in it. Yep.
Check it out.
Have a very important
You will
piece of
advocate for
equipment that
upgrade.
is 29 years old and needs to be replaced, and that's our chipper mulcher that we use on all of our greenway trails and things. So that's, if we talk about cutting $112,000 at some point, I really don't want it to be that piece of equipment, just from a safety standpoint, because if we have to start contracting all of that work out, we'll spend a lot more than 112. So that's really your high level kind of what to anticipate. And again, we'll talk about the things that got cut. Courtney, if you want to
revisit
pull up the environmental.
Can we revisit the backhoe at 360K?
So
There are 3 backhoes currently, is that right?
we have backhoes in operation every day in multiple departments, yes. And the 360 was actually a wheeled excavator that was requested. We have a backhoe that needs to be replaced. The
Okay.
request was to replace the backhoe. Thank you for bringing that up, because that was the extra page that got handed out.
Right.
The
It's also the cost of a bathhouse.
request for, yeah,
putting that out there.
exactly. The request for 360, we had to cut to make budget work.
Okay.
To replace the backhoe with a backhoe, you've got one document that says it's 150, one that's 210. The reason for that is Tess and I had 2 different sets of notes, because I asked the specific question of what would it cost to replace the backhoe with the backhoe.
Right.
One of us wrote down 210. One of us wrote down 150. Obviously, the difference between 210 and 360 is 150. So I'm going to have a final number for that come April 2nd. I think it's actually $150,000 for the backhoe,
Rather than the
which is
360.
equal to a 210 savings against the wheeled excavator. But,
Okay. And tell me the advantage of the wheel excavator.
Basically, you don't have to load it up on anything, and they can just,
It can come down Broad Street, is what you're telling me. You can drive down the street.
yeah. So,
And logistically, that takes a town truck and some sort of.
and a trailer.
And a trailer.
And, yeah.
Okay. Is that more a need of, is that a necessity or is that a convenience?
It is a convenience that one would hope ultimately would have an ROI. But again, at $210,000, it all depends on how long you're keeping that equipment and the trailer and the truck that's pulling the trailer and all of those types of
One
things.
would assume, perhaps falsely, that there would be more things to break with a backhoe that makes its way down the street. There are more parts to break, but maybe I'm wrong.
I would not jump to that
Okay.
conclusion.
Well,
Yeah.
feel free to educate
Yeah, I
me.
would.
That's
I don't know the exact answer to that, but I would not jump to that conclusion. Yeah. 'Cause
Yeah, okay.
Again, loading and unloading things from trailers have
True story.
their own issues involved
Right.
with it. And a backhoe, like so much of this public works equipment, some of your biggest challenges are always going to be with hydraulics and things more so than drivetrains and tires. So
Is the backhoe used is the backhoe used mainly for breaks in a sewer line? Is the backhoe used for putting in?
utilities have a backhoe that gets oftentimes used for not only brakes, but also taps and service line work. We're talking in this instance about a street backhoe, so it's out on street projects, curbing projects, sidewalk projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Your environmental services budget, this is one that we talk about every year. So this is a rather in-depth memo that Jessica put together talking about what that fee would look like. The initial couple of pages are really based around a continuation of the policy that we're currently under, which, to remind council, was that we would set a fee at the estimated 100% cost of commercial service to commercial businesses, and then we would set a fee that basically covered 75% of the residential cost, and this is to include garbage and our environmental services yard waste. Of course, the recycling is a separate fee of its own. We'll talk very briefly about that here shortly. But so your first chart there just talks about if you were to continue things as is, given the CPI increases and things that will happen in the Meridian Waste contract, and then our own increasing cost with staff, you would be looking at a $26.50 residential fee in the coming year, which is a $1.25 increase per month. And again, I'll let you spend time in these charts and things ahead of April 2nd, but we wanted to get them in your hands. There is a key number. Well, I'll come back to that in a little bit. We also offer an alternative structure to that sort of 100% commercial, 75% residential. What we would suggest with this particular approach, and I actually really like it after Jessica came up with it, is we would cover 100% of the Meridian contracts. So all Meridian expenses and those CPIs would go into the rate. And then we would cover a percentage of our environmental services. That's one that we have more direct control over. It's also fair to point out that with the environmental services, they're not only out there picking up the yard waste, but they get called upon anytime we have storm debris. They're obviously doing the bulk pickup, which we don't have to offer, but what the long-standing reasoning behind the town offering that, either through a contracted service or now since we're operating it, is that those are the types of things that get thrown alongside the road and then they just sit out there, and then they become a major issue for Lisa and our people to send letters and give people 30 days to remove them or fine them. It's a good service to have to kind of keep that type of thing out of the neighborhoods. So because they do have these sorts of things beyond just picking up individual yard waste, I think a reasonable argument can be made for covering some of environmental services under this particular model through general fund subsidization. But what that basically looks like relative to the fee is, rather than the increase, is it would go to $29.50 if you cover 60%, and then Jessica's also broke it out as 65, 70, or 75%. So you see those in front of you. The commercial services are far more straightforward because we don't do commercial yard waste, and we have limited commercial pickup. So the only other part of this, and I'm obviously interested in any initial feedback you have, and it's the first time you're seeing it, so I'm not asking for any final decisions, but wanted to at least put that alternative in front of you. It does generate a little more money to do the 100 and pick your 65, 70, 75, because obviously the rate goes up a little bit, so it generates a little bit more money. The other thing we wanted to put in front of you is, what if we made this an enterprise fund? And the bottom line is, if you go back to your first page, the first thing you would have to do in order to create a legitimate enterprise fund around this is you would go to that 100% monthly residential customer fee of $35.25. That is what it's going to cost, and that's based upon our current customer involvement and numbers. But you'll find at the end of this memo an explanation, basically, not only of the enterprise fund, because what you have to do is you then start to account for the internal figures. And Jessica actually provided an example of your current enterprise funds, which is your water and sewer funds, and how that works. Because keeping the rate kind of, or the rate approach that we are utilizing while it's in the general fund is only going to result in a net loss at the end of the year if it is an enterprise fund, once you account for all of the internal service that makes that service work. And technically speaking, you should never have an enterprise fund that is running at a negative, and I'll ask Mac to chime in on that if need be.
I think that when the idea of an enterprise fund came up, or at least when you and I talked about it, the idea was to have it operate like an enterprise fund, so it's its own account, and we can see the money in and see the money out, but not necessarily run it like a true enterprise fund like the water, where we don't subsidize it at all. Like, the idea was that the town is still going to pay money, but last year on the spreadsheet, there was $60,000 that got moved into the trash number that nobody knows where it came from. Do you remember, like, the random number that when Brandon asked Jessica, because there was a spreadsheet, every number pulls from another cell except for that number, it was just typed in. So I think the idea to put it into its own fund was not so that it pays for itself, but so that it is fully transparent for our citizens to see what are they paying for versus what is the general revenue paying for.
Okay, that is not an enterprise fund then,
No,
so.
it's the idea that it's its own account and is like an enterprise fund. And I'm not sure how the conversation,
I mean, the minute you say like an enterprise fund, that makes it a business-like activity, which means it pays for itself.
okay, how do we put it into an account where we can see what money is spent on
I mean,
municipal waste,
you're receiving,
yard waste?
on the revenue side, you can see the money coming in with the
Right.
finance reports. We can provide very easily what we are spending with Meridian, with collection. Obviously, that's what we've attempted to do in arriving at this figure relative to our own staffing and vehicles. And a lot of that is still going to involve those, basically a formula that assigns some tasks to that service. So
Okay.
I think we can provide that, and I'm sorry if I completely
No, it's okay. I mean,
ran with the enterprise.
and maybe Brandon's goal was for it to be an actual enterprise fund. My understanding was that we were always going to provide, the town was always going to cover some of the services. Whether that means that yard waste versus municipal waste are different things, or, I mean, I don't think that we're in a position that we put it in an enterprise fund and send everyone a bill for the full amount.
Right.
But the numbers are good. I mean, it's not a waste of time to have the numbers. because I think it's important that as
So I
council
think it's
members,
good
we
to have the
know.
numbers.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, yes.
What's
It
the,
coming up, my interest was never that the entire cost of yard waste and municipal waste is covered fully in a bill.
Okay. That is actually exceptionally helpful, because if that is a common feel, we don't need to spend additional time necessarily on the enterprise discussion, although I still think tracking the expenses and things is extremely useful. So then at that point, the only real conversation is whether you continue with the billing as we've been doing, the 100%, 75%, or we take a look at kind of this second alternative scenario. And again, I don't need an answer on that today, but at least that change, because this was going to be the heaviest lift.
Yeah.
And creating an enterprise fund was going to be the heaviest lift. There may be value in it ultimately one day, particularly if they take away our property tax abilities.
I was like, then it has to be.
one question I have, if Tess maybe could answer, you don't do it now, but
Yeah.
explain to us what is the benefit of having this as an enterprise fund, short of just easily siloing it, and it's very easy to track and see. Are there other benefits to a municipality by creating an enterprise fund for such use?
We would not be the first to do this, and there's a lot of places that do treat their garbage as an enterprise fund. I mean, the advantage to it is you're charging what the cost of the service is. I mean, it's very straightforward. I think there's always this fear that somehow we're overcharging for the service, and that we're using that money to build playgrounds or something. And that's, I mean, the numbers, that's clearly not what is occurring.
I mean, we live in a small community right next to other towns that charge differently for their municipal
right.
waste services. So yeah, there's going to always be speculation about, mismanagement of money.
And I will say, when this figure came out to be 35 and a quarter, and I don't think I mentioned it, there is a request you'll hear about next Thursday that is not funded in the budget we have put together right now for an additional knuckle boom truck, the grappler truck, because as I was afraid was going to be the case, our trucks spend a lot of time being down, and it's not so much the truck, it's all the hydraulics on the arm and stuff. So the guys are working a lot of Saturdays to keep up with routes, and I think across the board, I've not heard anyone say that the service has gotten worse since the town took it over. I think they're extremely conscientious about trying to keep up and keep things picked up. So they'd like to have a third truck so that they can greater guarantee that two of them will always be on the road. But bottom line, to give you an idea of the impact of that, if you were to go full accounting and do the environmental services, it adds $2. So 35 and a quarter becomes 37 and a quarter. What I started to say, though, in speaking with the Pinehurst manager, and he was talking about how they kind of have the hybrid in-house program, but they also have contracts with private haulers and CCNC and Pinewild, and their numbers, now again, they charge differently, they keep it in property taxes, but they're looking at numbers that are in the $33 to $37 range. So we're in that same ballpark when we look at 35 and a quarter with a private hauler on one side of it. So, but anyhow, that's really, again, any initial reaction to that idea of moving the Meridian to the 100% and then doing a percentage of the environmental services versus just keep it with the way we've been doing it and look at the $1.25. That's helpful for us putting together our final figures. I say final, our final draft figures for next Thursday. You can always change it on Thursday too, because I understand this is one fee in the grand scheme of revenue streams and things that if it comes down to, doing it another way makes a difference on tax rate and things, you're going to want to reserve the right to make that decision too. So
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'd probably like more time to read both of these pages.
absolutely.
But I can get information to you before next week. I feel like if I had to pick right now, I would just lean on doing it the way that we decided last year and to just for consistency's sake. But I appreciate Jessica's alternative.
Yeah.
And I'll take time to read it.
Okay.
So based on your explanation of the enterprise fund, which we would need to zero out, I think what I'm understanding is you're talking about maybe doing a silo restricted fund if we were to do that, and nobody is on board with an enterprise fund, just to give more direction here. Is that right?
I don't think it's even necessary to look at it as a silo or restricted fund, because the bottom line is without that rate, you're not going to generate your expense.
Correct, right, which is, okay, understandable. And I do think that a $10 a month per person jump is a pretty significant jump, particularly
It is.
as gas prices are not getting any, nothing is going down. So, yeah, I'd be tempted to roll with where we've been. I'm also understand the concern about if there's money that magically shows up that as a citizen, as a constituent, I would be interested in where that came from, where that 50,000 came from and how it got there. But I don't see, unless someone can school me on this, I don't see an advantage to an enterprise fund setup. But for the fact that we would have that covered, it's a way of taxing people without raising the taxes.
It really forces your hand and
Yeah.
future council's hand to charge the true expense of
Right.
the service.
And it also becomes a regressive tax.
And
for
some
those
people would look at that as an advantage, and others would look at it as a
Right,
negative. I mean,
right,
but it's,
Right. It becomes a regressive tax for people on a low income. $120 a year to somebody making $22,000 a year is a whole lot more than $120 additional a year to somebody making $100,000 a year. So
This is true.
It
The other
becomes-
side of that, though, is that garbage is one of those services that the value of your home is not correlated in any way, shape, or form with the amount of garbage, yard waste, whatever that you
well,
put at the
that's the
curb.
truth. Right. I understand
it's-
that. Right. Right.
At some point, it is a fee for a service like your water. I mean, it doesn't make sense at this point because it's, financially not feasible. But I think for transparency's sake, it makes sense to have accurate numbers. And as sitting council members to understand that when we are incurring a fee per household, that we ought to know what that fee is and that our residents should know what they're paying. And how much of it is going into taxes or that we're subsidizing. I mean, it's like the bulk pickup. Like it is not necessary, but it's something that makes sense for us to do and for us to subsidize so that it doesn't end up on the side of the road or, in your neighbor's yard.
The one thing I will add, because you just brought it up on the good news standpoint, I think the utility budget's going to come together rather nicely. SDF was strong for the year, may not be in the coming years. We've talked about development and how it's kind of scaled back. James will be opening later this week the North Pressure Zone, the water tank project, but I am feeling short of really, really bad bid day. I'm feeling pretty good that we may be able to pay cash for that project as opposed to go out for some sort of loan or something. And that's a direct result of council's handling of the kind of the annual increases over a period of time. We've talked about how the retained earnings were growing so that as we get into these larger projects, we can address them. And I think that's going to pay off. So I think we'll have some good news on the utility side.
That's good.
Clarification question on this alternate structure as I review this.
Yeah.
Is that then forcing everybody back into recycling, which would be a?
No, it
So-
doesn't change the service levels at
So
all.
there would still be the $10
Yeah.
option?
Yeah.
Okay.
$45 a month.
Yeah.
Right.
Are you getting the 40? Oh, that's a different page. I think Bill's asking about the alternative structure.
You just said that garbage and
Yeah,
recycling
it
are
does not
provided.
change the recycling whatsoever.
Toggle is still by each person.
Yeah, what we're paying for.
About how you want to account for whether, right now you're basically saying 75% of Meridian, 75% of environmental services. The alternative, it would say, let's do 100% on that contracted service and then 65% for starters, but of the environmental services department.
So-
So it just changes that part of the formula. It doesn't have anything to do with recycling because that's already being covered at 100% by those who opt into the service.
So do you need or want an answer on this issue
Today?
prior to next week, or you want it today?
No, I
You're saying
I thought that was your
today.
question. I was going to say no.
So we could take this and
Absolutely.
sort of just
That's
look it
the
over and
intent.
come back to you?
Yes.
I appreciate that very much.
That is absolutely.
Because
the
this is
intent.
very thorough, and like you were saying, man, we just
Would you like us to each email you by the end of the week on if we have a preference for status quo or alternate?
If you feel like you're already at a point of having a preference, that would be great to know. I mean, what I will come with on Thursday, I will tell you right now, the numbers Tess and I are working with, we went with the alternative just because I thought it like made a lot of sense. But what I will have on that Thursday is the delta between the two, where if you just want to stick with what you have, then we're going to remove this much revenue and here's the impact on the bottom line. I always try to bring to that April 2nd meeting some money for you to make some decisions. So I'm perfectly comfortable with that.
Okay. Do you have questions or just, okay. Then, yeah, thank you for Jessica who's not here, just,
Yep.
yeah, thank her for.
Courtney
the
was
additional
extremely
information.
helpful with it also.
Thank you.
And the poor girl, I changed the backhoe thing on her twice today, so that's why you have two different versions. So
And we have both versions. Okay, so along with the budget, is there a chance that you'll have a draft budget available by Friday or Monday?
Tess and I just had that conversation today. I said I wanted to have something out no later than Monday. I'd love to have it by Friday. I'm not in a position to guarantee it
Okay,
at this point.
I'm okay with Monday.
It'll be very much draft. I mean, whatever. If I send it on Friday, most definitely, and there's a chance if I send it on Monday, I may walk in and I'll open on Thursday with here's some changes to what you've already received. But
Okay, so if council is okay with getting the draft on Monday, knowing that it's going to be a better draft than Friday,
yeah,
does that sound okay? Yeah, and then we have a couple days to look over it before the budget retreat.
And Beth, for that one, I hate to inconvenience, but can you get me a printed version of that one? Just the package for budget, I see them better on paper than on the iPad.
Tess will put together budget
Or is it
books
Tess?
for you. Do you want that on Monday with the release, or we can bring that in on Thursday? You'll have a book to work from?
That's fine, you should bring them Thursday, it's fine for me.
Yeah, if you want to send the digital Monday,
Yeah,
it's fine.
Tess usually brings hard copies for everybody on Thursday, so, and we'll get, yeah,
Okay. Do you want a hard copy Monday?
we'll print you a packet, so.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
That's all I have today, so.
have some water. You earned it.
Okay. As far as before we leave the budget retreat preview, our schedule for next Thursday. You want us there at,
I am going to back up 1 minute because I skipped a very important item.
Okay.
And it's referenced in your budget preview document. We actually got exceptionally good bids on our paving program that just came in late last week, and James and I have been working with Tess and crunching numbers. We have got two significant stormwater projects that absolutely need to get done. They're currently failed pipe, one being down here on Bennett and another one on Country Club Drive. We have a contractor that is ready to go. He's got a hole in his schedule, and because of the way the paving bids came in, we actually have money in the current budget to go ahead and tackle these. We were originally budgeting a transfer to the Stormwater Fund in fiscal year '27 to address them. I would just as soon address them now while there's cash on hand before we have some monsoon-type rain and something happens.
Can you explain exactly where where you're talking about on Country Club Drive? Is it where George, whose last name I don't remember, has put in an entire
No,
30,000?
it is not
Okay, it's
that
not there.
situation.
It's not there.
It is
Where
not
is
that
where is it
situation.
located on Country Club Drive?
I don't have that with me because there's a nice picture of it. I'll get you that. It's,
Yeah, there's a huge overflow issue that's taking people's yards and filling their basements with water on the Country Club. I guess it's called Country Club Extension that
Yeah.
is parallel to Country Club, loosely parallel to Country Club Drive.
yeah, this is, as I understand it, is actually an existing pipe that has failed. but it's not that scenario because I specifically asked James whether it was going to be that scenario or not.
Okay. I would appreciate,
Yeah, and the
Maybe-
Bennett Street one is in the vicinity, I believe, of Cavalry Christian. and
Right,
along there.
okay.
So, and we've got some temporary measures in place, but they're temporary measures.
and what have been the
so.
repercussion, the stormwater repercussions and sedimentation issues that have resulted from the Bennett Street issue right now? I mean, how have we assessed that that is a damaged pipe? And what have been the repercussions of having a damaged pipe there on Bennett Street? Whose property has been impacted by that?
It's along Bennett. Again, I believe it's in the area that Cavalry Christian, so it could potentially, I believe, impact the stormwater pond there that is at the bottom
Right,
of
so
the
that's,
hill.
it's emptying into the stormwater
Yeah,
pond.
but it's not, yeah, it is existing pipe that needs to be replaced.
Okay. I'd be interested in getting with you and doing a quick drive-by of where both those are. I certainly support dealing with a busted pipe and
Yeah.
putting the money
Yeah.
there, but I'd like
And
to
again, it's
have-
an opportunity, because we had money in a transfer to the
Right.
fund, but if we can get it knocked out and we have a contractor available, now is the time to do it. So-
And doing both of these projects would not result in taking down a lot of trees in order to do these.
No.
No trees at all.
Because they're, no,
But,
existing projects.
essential
so
question, would a backhoe be involved?
I'm pretty sure it would be, yes.
All right, thank you.
Do you need approval from us to do those two projects? I mean, it's
No.
already in the budget. Okay.
It's in the budget.
I mean, it's a failing town asset.
What you might see, and this will be, we're working with Tess on it, we might have a budget transfer to the stormwater fund and put it into the capital project fund. We're going to check with the contractor, make sure it can be done by June 30th or not. But that transfer would not be from your available fund balance. It would be from the remaining money in the street department as a result of the good bid on paving to the capital project fund. So it would have no bottom line impact.
Okay.
If you see that transfer, it'll be at your, we're in March now, April council meeting. So
Okay, you guys good?
Yeah, thank you.
Good, Bill? Okay. All right, thank you.
thank you.
Oh, agenda for next week. Just what time do you want us there? Do you need any information for breakfast, lunch, planning? Yeah.
We have historically gotten together at 8:30 and kicked off at 9. You all talked
We
about
talked
starting a
earlier.
little earlier. If you want to start at 8:30 and try to show up between 8 and 8:30 and
What time did we end when we started?
Last year was
8:30?
not bad. Yeah, last year I want to say it was.
last year was not
4.
bad.
Was it? No, it wasn't no 10, 11.
Never.
You're talking PM.
I mean, Pete.
Oh, we had a
good
13
God.
or 16-hour session
That was during
one year.
COVID, I think. Yeah. And then I think my first year we went until like 7 o'clock, and I think I was shot by that time.
At 5 or something like that last year. Yeah.
Last year was 4 or 5. Yeah, it felt very.
I have my service at 6, but
Gonna have soap pies on.
Well,
hot
if
dial.
we can start at 8:30, it gives you a better chance of being out by your service. So arrive before 8:30.
Yes.
There will be breakfast-ish
We'll have
foods
some breakfast available, yes.
thank you.
between 8 and 8:30. Start
Fire
at
Station
8:30.
2.
Oh, nice. I like it up there.
And then if once you have a draft of those documents, if the council members can go ahead and start going through those before the Thursday meeting with questions or concerns or things that stand out as issues, that might help us keep moving along too.
Yeah, the other thing I will want to put together for you is not only the draft document, but I'll get you a list of things not funded too, because that usually
great.
ends up being quite a bit of the conversation. So,
It is good to see.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions before Thursday?
Just in light of Deborah's indication, and I remember Bill had to leave for a child. And Bill has the most amazing athletic children, and there's always something going on. And what an agent they have to get their pictures in the pilot all the time. So he had to leave at one point to fly out to a volleyball tournament, I think. And Deborah may have to leave early. I'm going to tell you, medically, I don't know that I'll last the whole day. So I may let you all go ahead and start at 8:30 and plan to fill in. I don't want us to be without a quorum. So if Deborah may have to leave early, I may try to do the second half or the after. I don't know. I'll see how I'm doing.
Yeah.
Stitches come out
Well,
Thursday.
In all likelihood, we'll kick off with the utilities budget, which is usually
Okay.
not super lengthy, and I think it should be good this year. If I've got MSD figures, I'll have that for you, but that might be a 15-minute conversation.
Okay.
I don't know if I will have those yet from the county, because
That's a
that
few days
entire
out,
thing is
yeah.
just based on what the valuations are. So
So when you have the budget draft on Monday, if you could also have a draft agenda. That way, Ann, if you have issues with anything at the top of the agenda,
If I need to wiggle around making sure we have a quorum, I'll try to do that. Yes, sir.
As long as you're not excused, if you leave, you don't defeat the quorum.
Okay. So be there. So your advice would be there at 8:30 and,
were you saying you have to leave at some point? Okay. I don't think a quorum should end up being a problem one way or the
okay,
other.
I'll talk to you after the meeting, Mac. I'll
Yeah.
do whatever seems smart.
And you have surgery coming up.
Deborah?
You already did.
No, yeah, thank you. Anyway, thank you. We're all good.
okay, roundtable. I think that, did we start this side last time? So
We did.
Deborah, do you have anything for roundtable? I know we're gonna see each other a lot in the next couple of weeks, so
Yeah.
it's okay if there's nothing now, but
No,
yeah, if
not
you have
at all.
anything,
Not at all.
okay.
Table is very brief this afternoon. The first one is I did contact, per the mayor's encouragement, I did contact DOT about the corner at May and Indiana. They are researching that. They told me that they should have people out there doing counts and that, yes, when they said, oh, we looked at a traffic circle, I said, which you know is not going to work. And they went, yeah, it's not going to work. So we basically got to the suggestion that quite frankly, had come from a constituent, which is just a really practical suggestion to do the lead turn left. I have seen that traffic to turn left onto Indiana on May backed up all the way to Connecticut. It's a bruiser. So I'm hoping that they'll do that. They know that we're concerned about it, and hopefully I'll continue to harass them as necessary. They did say they were working on it and it would come up at their next meeting. So there you go. Thank you to those of you who reached out. Yes, surgery was very successful, also very painful. Appreciate that. And my only other thing I was going to say is I didn't know how my participation on 4-2 would go, but we've covered that. So thank you. Oh, and it's Paul Murphy's birthday. Today is Paul Murphy's birthday, and they're celebrating his being at AME on from 5 to 7 this evening. So
Oh, no, actually, that's canceled, y'all. His wife,
Okay.
Sharon, Sharon is taking him, oh, I know he's not watching, so she's taking him to,
And please turn off the screen, yes.
yeah, she's
never mind.
surprising him.
It's canceled. No
he-
surprise. We can't announce surprises. Happy birthday, Paul. There we go. We're going to stop before we get in trouble with Sharon. Happy birthday, Paul.
Happy birthday, Paul. Okay, I think the only thing I had is I've had complaints about May in New York as far as crosswalk. It's pedestrian and not a driving issue there, but it relates to the same intersection issues. So
Yeah.
I made a phone call to Ruben this morning as well.
Yeah,
But I'm glad
I would
that
love
he's
to hear
on
from.
it.
It seems like to me, if all of us called Ruben, a couple times a week, they'd probably do it rather than continue to receive calls from us. He was very kind. He was very professional.
He's great.
He's lovely.
Yep. And then the only other thing I had was about the properties, but we've already discussed that. So I will let Bill speak.
Having too much, just use this opportunity sometimes to give credit to town staff that do a good job. It's baseball season now, and so spending a lot of time at all those fields down there, Memorial, A, B, and C field. And for a couple weeks, people were like, oh, are these bathrooms going to be opened? And so I messaged Greg, and his team was on it. They waited for it to warm up just a tad, and then they've de-winterized them. They're open, and everybody's super happy now. So he's always spot on every time I reach out to him with the concern. The new fences look and operate really great down there as well. So thanks to them for doing all that.
Yeah, I just had two quick things. In the interest of transparency, I talked about it like 2 meetings ago, I think, and it was, and I just wanted you all council members to know that I went back with the staff, and we sort of come up with a plan. It's a long-term plan for the historic survey, kind of just reevaluating who we are and what we're doing. Really, we can't do anything now this year, obviously, because the timeline from flash to bang is too quick. In other words, we'd have to get everything done in about 10 days. So I'm going to come back at each and every one of you after we flush out the staff and look at a 27, 28 option to get a matching funds for a CLG grant. And so the staff would have basically about a year to work this up well after next month's showdown at the OK Corral, so to speak, that marathon financing, we're getting ready to go. But I just want you guys to know that we're still on it, but it's going to be a year before we can put in for it, and then it takes another year before it can actually be approved and we see the funds. And so at next year's meeting, we're going to be asking for some minor, not some minor, we're going to ask for some matching grants. And I just want you guys to be aware that, that I brought it up, we followed up, but so if you don't hear about it too much, it's probably because BJ and the guys and Rig and the whole team have it. But I think it's important, just so we can kind of see where we're at, update who we are. I don't think that's such a pressing issue that we need to rush to failure. I think we just take our time and be very deliberate about it. And fortunately, the rules and regulations on how to put in for these CLG grants force our hand, which is nice.
So this is reevaluating the historic district downtown. Yeah, I feel like we ought to, before we fund a budgetary item on matching that grant or even applying for the grant,
Yeah.
we ought to at least have it discussed by the HDC at one of their meetings and then have them make a recommendation to us at a public meeting so that it's on everyone's radar, because
Yeah.
I want to make sure that the property owners that are in that area around understand the
And that's-
potential changes.
You're exactly right. That's one of the things that we talked with BJ, Mason, James. We all talked that through, very much in the embryonic stage in terms of where we're going. But I think if we just hear a little bit of it every so often, by the time it's time to make a decision, we'll have enough information. We don't have to jump through hoops. So I just wanted you to know about that. The only question I had, if I could go back, was the probably for you, Reagan. Sorry, buddy. It's all right. But it was the I can't think. It's where we the garage, and we were talking about. I mean, that thing. When I went on my visit, they brought me all around the town. I mean, the guys were working amazing, but like half of it's out of, half it's not inside of a garage. They're out in the elements. And the only question is, you don't have to answer it now. It's just I can swing by next week, the week after. But is there a timeline that you had in mind or the staff has in mind to sort of upgrade that facility? I haven't, unless I missed it, and I very well could have. I think that's just important because now we're talking about adding more vehicles and things like that. I don't need an answer now because you probably have so much things going on. And then one last question, and then I'm done, ma'am, I promise you. When we take a police vehicle or a fire vehicle, there's a lot of sensitive items that are in those vehicles. And when we bring it to, and again, don't need the answer now, when we bring it to can I use this term? To a civilian agency that is not that is not directed to the town. I mean, are there a lot of safeguards and measures to take out that sensitive items? And I'm not thinking what you guys think like weapons. I'm thinking about there's computer data systems in there.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of infrastructure in those vehicles that not necessarily everybody in there, the next door neighbor needs to see what goes on in those things for our safety as citizens. I was just curious about that.
So, two quick answers to both of those questions. One, the garage don't necessarily have an immediate time frame. It is not falling off of the radar. We're actually just trying to refine, again, needs versus wants, and to be able to provide a decent number and approach to the town council. And that's something that won't be ready to go for adoption in June necessarily. Relative to those police vehicles, we remove all of that stuff.
Yeah.
When that vehicle goes out the door, it's basically just
figured that.
a Caprice or whatever. Now, if it had an Interceptor engine, it's a little different than you're going to go buy at the used car lot, down in Aberdeen or something. But no, all that, the laptops, even the K9 cages will come out of those cars. So
I assumed that, but I was just
Yeah.
curious. And my last question, I'm just kidding. That was it. Thank you very much
Obviously,
for
we
your
remove
time.
all the striping and such also, so that somebody can't take it out and pretend to be an
Right?
officer.
Yeah. No, that's legit. Somebody did hijack about 3 weeks ago a running vehicle It was an ambulance, though. It was not it was somewhere in North Carolina here, too.
It's a lot of expensive.
Did you see that on the news? Randolph County? Yeah, of course, Chief knows. But thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
I would make a motion that we adjourn.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, guys.